Jeremiah Love is a player that you have to keep an eye out on just because of a running back, his versatility, how good he is in the receiving game this year. We haven't seen a running back potentially crack the top three when you just think about it with the Heisman Trophy back there. Jeremiah Love just dominant. If Notre Dame wins out and they're in the college football playoff, Love should be involved in the conversation.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Starts off on a positive note of getting Lamar Jackson back Thursday night, which was great. He threw for 200 yards, did not look rusty at all. He only rushed for 15, but he didn't really need that. Lamar Jackson also threw for 4 touchdowns, 2 of which going to Mark Andrews. So guess who's back and relative again at the tight end position now that Lamar's back? Oh, wait, it's Mark Andrews. No kidding. I mean, the guy just catches touchdowns. It's Lamar's favorite guy in the red zone.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Fly Pelican, more like grounded Pelican. The Pelicans are 0-6 to start the season. Their main guys aren't their main guys. And it comes to a point where, what do you do if you are Joe Dumars and the leadership of New Orleans?
Pro Basketball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Blue Jays are going to be dangerous for years to come because they have money. They're a fun team. Other players like Guerrero, the Blue Jays are a first-class organization. They treat the players very well. They're first-class complex. As I stated earlier, you can live like across the street from the stadium and there's no drama. You don't have to sit in traffic ever. You have an entire country that buys your jerseys and are big fans of yours.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Good afternoon. Happy Monday. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Another big football weekend coming to a close tonight, and it's a real good one tonight on Monday Night Football. We'll have a preview, of course, of the Packers and Eagles. Also recap everything that happened in the National Football League and college football over the weekend. For that, of course, we have Adam Kaplan, our SportsGrid insider. We also have Jacob Kamaker here on the show, as well as Donnie Rightside giving us the latest news, notes, and information. And certainly it was a fun weekend of National Football League games, at least the early window. Late window not as good yesterday, and we're getting closer and closer to the college football playoff as well. Also the latest in the NBA, no doubt. But we start off the show today with the sports betting story that appears that has come to a head as of yesterday. There is now officially a federal indictment against Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz. These are pitchers for the Cleveland Guardians that were involved in an alleged scheme, pitchers to intentionally throw balls so bettors who were micro betting on their pitches could wager on those to be balls or strikes. It started back in 2023, allegedly with Clase, and then later included Ortiz. Prosecutors alleged that Ortiz was paid $5,000 for throwing an intentional ball on June 15th, and Emmanuel Clase was given $5,000 to facilitate it. You may remember earlier in the year, both players were placed on suspended leave, and as of now, it looks like they're in a lot more trouble than that. Future in baseball certainly in jeopardy, no question. Statement from Major League Baseball says that Major League Baseball contacted federal law authorities and enforcement at the outset of the investigation. They fully cooperated, and they're aware of the indictment on today's arrest, and the investigation is ongoing. I know that Ortiz has officially been arrested. Not sure about Clase as of yesterday, so certainly we'll follow the story for you. And naturally, a lot bigger topics coming your way with sports betting when it pertains to some of this stuff. All right, last night, open and shut case in the final game of Sunday night. The Los Angeles Chargers just dominated the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not much of a game, honestly. 25-10. The Steelers could get nothing going offensively at all, and the Chargers just basically did enough. Justin Herbert throwing touchdown passes, including one to Ladd McConkey, Kimani Vidal, also a good game on the ground, but basically their defense just held the Steelers in check. It was one of the poorest offensive performances for the Steelers all season in a 15-point win. And Mike Tomlin says that if you can't play any offense at all, you can't expect to win.
Shoot, it's probably midway of the fourth quarter before we converted a third down. And you're not going to win football games not converting third down and losing the turnover battle. And we certainly were loose with the ball in several instances and didn't convert enough third downs. And so that's the end result. There's nothing mystical about it. We'll be back. We'll be better. We have to be, but we certainly weren't tonight. Slay was out. He's in the concussion protocol. We'll see where that leads us this week. The rest is bumps and bruises associated with play. Joey Porter Jr. went back in the game.
But the best to me are the physical ones, won by heart and grit and guts. And to me, those are the best, and that's what this one was. And I just feel like our team's got hearts of champions, and now this next week going forward, our best performance is going to be needed. But yeah, I love these kind of wins.
Meanwhile, Jim's brother John also picked up a win for the Baltimore Ravens yesterday, 27-19. Baltimore beats Minnesota. Ravens were 4.5-point favorites and end up covering the spread late, total 48.5. Very emotional win, says John Harbaugh, for his team going on the road and winning in Minnesota.
I just at the end of the game, I was pretty choked up inside, and I didn't shed a tear. I wouldn't let that happen. But just what these guys, just how hard they fought and how much they believed, how much courage they showed, and you know what, we're just 4-5, we're still under 500. So that's where we're at. We recognize that, and we know we're going to have a big fight, a big, tough, knockdown, drag-out fight in Cleveland next week. We know what that is. We understand what that always is. So just to get to 500, and that's what we're going to be fighting for.
Meanwhile, there's a new favorite to win the National Football League's most valuable player on the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's now Matthew Stafford, the favorite to win MVP. He's 3-1, tied with Drake May. He threw 4 touchdown passes on Sunday as the Rams beat the 49ers 42-26. Rams were 5.5-point favorites, but Stafford, as of yet, says he's not really paying any attention to the MVP buzz.
I don't pay too much attention to him. I'm trying to just continue to find ways to be a good football player for this team, lead this team, and try to get us in the end zone as much as I can, do my job as best I can. With that comes whatever. And I don't know. I think about those awards. I see those people say stuff like that, and all I can think about is I'm just lucky to have unbelievable teammates. I really am. To be able to throw the ball to the guys I get to throw the ball to, play behind this line, and hand it off to these guys. I feel like there's a lot of people that could be doing what I'm doing. So I'm obviously working hard at it, trying to be as good as I possibly can. But I'm really appreciative of the guys that are, they're in that locker room with me.
Patriots just keep on winning, going on the road and winning again in Tampa Bay. They're now 8-2 on the season, 28-23 win in the Bay Area in Florida. Also, Jonathan Taylor, if you had him in fantasy football and lost yesterday, I don't believe you. It's not possible. 244 yards, 3 touchdowns. The Colts beat the Falcons, one of the better games, by the way, that I've seen overseas in a long time, 31-25 in overtime. Speaking of good games yesterday, the Texans scored 26 points in the fourth quarter as the Jaguars blew this one, 36-29 the final. Late defensive touchdown, by the way. This game wasn't particularly it was a lot closer than the score would indicate, I should say. Texans were 1.5-point favorites. Of course, they covered the spread with that late touchdowns. Kind of a wild defensive finish. Here's D'Amico Ryans on that victory.
That's what good football looks like. That's what we've been missing. I told the guys we've been in this situation before in the fourth quarter where we've allowed the quarterback to scramble and make a play. So we knew the D-line had to come up big and get stops for us, and they did that. So when you have, I can't say all of that without saying how Davis played. Davis did an outstanding job of leading the offense all week, and he did it again today to come out and have a pick on the first drive. Right, it's easy to go in the tank, but he bounced back. He kept battling, kept making plays. And, he goes for 3 touchdowns and the one rushing one that we needed the most at the end. So I'm proud of Davis for the way he stepped up, led all week.
The Buffalo Bills suffer their biggest upset and one of the bigger upsets in the NFL this season. How did this happen? Buffalo, 9.5-point favorites, go on the road Devon A-Chain goes off for 225. Miami beats Buffalo 30-13 at home. Lost for words is Josh Allen on his poorest performance of the season, no doubt.
They came ready to play. They wanted it obviously a little more than us. I got to be better. I'd be better in the protection game, in the pass game, in the run game, all of it. It's anytime you turn it over 3 times, 2 in the red zone, and really you could count that last one, driving, kind of going into the red zone. So that's a recipe for disaster.
What sort of answers did you guys find at halftime that allowed you to start driving down the field and having a little bit more success in the third quarter and entering the fourth?
Yeah, I just feel like early on kind of beating ourselves, and again, credit to them for coming out and playing. We got to be better.
Chicago Bears season on the brink, still alive, 24-20. They beat the New York Giants and come back to win. Jackson Dart, by the way, exited that game with a concussion. The Jets with a victory on Sunday, a rare one. 2 special teams touchdowns. New York beats Cleveland 27-20. Bryce Young had a rough game in the Superdome as the Saints beat the Panthers by a final of 17-7. And so Carolina's season now on the brink as well with a tough loss there. Meanwhile, Brian Kelly, fired by LSU, is still looking for his money. He rejected 2 settlement offers, says that he's owed $54 million. Tatsuya Imai is getting ready to become the next Japanese player to move to Major League Baseball. He's a very highly coveted pitcher. And condolences to the family of Lenny Wilkins, great NBA player and also great coach, passed away at the age of 88. We'll be back with Vinny Iyer next.
We now have to figure out if they will be in the playoffs. They're the Super Bowl favorite and have shorter odds to miss the postseason as you and I sit here right now.
Right, but let me ask you this. Do you feel after this 5-4 record, 9 weeks, 10 weeks of the regular season, that their defense is as dominant as it was last year?
But the offense is better.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Fly, Pelican, more like grounded Pelican. The Pelicans are 0-6 to start the season. Their main guys aren't their main guys. And it comes to a point where, what do you do if you are Joe Dumars and the leadership of New Orleans?
Pro Basketball Today, only on SportsGrid.
You want to throw $12, $13 million at Kiffin? That's always a possibility. Summerall, they lost the other night to, in that matchup to UTSA. Or do you go back to potentially the mad scientist and Nick Saban, give him, complete control of the athletic department and see if he can turn it around? We'll see. But whatever they go, they're going to need a coach to hit the ground running.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
His daughter, she's on the OF.
Okay.
She's on the OF.
Is that right?
Yeah, she's on the OF.
So he's got
now.
an OnlyFans daughter and a little son
who says he can beat Curry and LeBron.
And he's coaching a team that was down 72 to
Keep
nothing.
that dude away from polite society.
Okay, by the way, I'm with you. I didn't know any of that is.
Numerous pops gotta go.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Vinny Iyer is with us from Sporting News to recap the National Football League action from Sunday. We'll see also if he likes anything in tonight's game. Should be a good one with Philly and Green Bay. But Vinny, welcome back to NewsWire here on this Monday. And certainly an eventful first half of the games yesterday, including the morning, and then the later games not so much, including last night's game. I guess we got the trade-off. The overseas game in the morning was a lot better than the Sunday night game. It was kind of a dud. Chargers win 25-10. It took a bit for LA to get going on offense. Eventually they did, and did just enough Herbert 220 and a touchdown. And by the way, all of this was like in the second half of the game. It just seemed like they wore down Pittsburgh eventually and won. And a good win for the Chargers here, and Pittsburgh more of the same, just picking spots where their offense shows up, Vinny. It feels like about half the time you could trust them, and in the other half of the time they look like this.
Yeah, they just have a very limited offense. I mean, they have one receiver, it's DK Metcalf. If their tight ends are not working with Aaron Rodgers and they don't have a running game, their offense is pretty easy to shut down and go after Rodgers. They double-teamed Metcalf last night. The Chargers, they were the tougher team overall. The Steelers made a lot of mental mistakes, which is uncharacteristic. They didn't make those mistakes last week. They forced them from the Colts. So I don't know what Steelers team you get from week to week. They have a rematch with the Bengals this week. It's also a concern that everyone can see the trajectory, right? The Steelers keep fading just a little. The Ravens keep moving up. That the Ravens are going to be the team to beat here soon. They haven't played each other yet this season. But right now, if you had to say at neutral field, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, you'd feel a lot better with Baltimore at this stage with their defense playing better, Lamar Jackson back. So it's not looking good for the Steelers in terms of finishing strong this year. I thought the Colts game, they might have turned things around, but they went around and played their usual kind of inept offense 1 week later.
Yeah, Chargers, by the way, plus 320 to win the West. Very close with the Chargers and Broncos, and even the Chiefs are all going to be involved in this. So the West still a long way from being determined. And Vinny, as you alluded to, the Ravens come up very big on Sunday. 27-19 was the final in this game. It felt like Baltimore had a lot of opportunities to put this game away, but Minnesota really just, I don't know, with J.J. McCarthy, I'm just not sure at this point, Vinny, watching him play. I know he's had some good quarters here, but 27-19 the final. And as you mentioned, Pittsburgh put themselves in a really good spot early in the season, but now they are just one game ahead of the Baltimore Ravens. And let's show the folks here the odds to win this paltry division. I mean, honestly, 10-7. I don't know that any team is going to get to 10-7. Pittsburgh's 5-4, and then the Ravens are right there at 4-5. The other teams are out of it. But as you alluded to, Vinny, right now you feel better about Baltimore's chances, considering they have 2 games with Pittsburgh still left.
Yeah, they also have 2 games with Cincinnati. They play Cleveland this week, and the Steelers have to deal with Cincinnati. They lost the first time in that matchup. It's not a gimme game where I think the Ravens should feel confident going on the road to Cleveland this week to win. So, yeah, all the momentum is with the Ravens right now, and that's what we look at here in these divisions that are not very good. We look at the marathon, not the sprint, and we were looking at the sprint with the Steelers, but the Ravens just needed Lamar Jackson back in the lineup. You knew they were going to do something to fix their defense, which we've started to see here with some personnel changes and the schematic looks here. So the Ravens are a well-coached team for a reason. I mean, I can't believe we were asking if John Harbaugh was still going to have a job. And now he's going to be in the Coach of the Year running if they come back from their hole and make the playoffs. So a lot of crowd for that, I guess, with Mike Vrabel, Shane Steichen. Now you throw Mike McDonald in that race here at this point. So I think, look, the Ravens should win the division at this point. I mean, the Steelers are just too flawed of a team. They just don't have enough offense. I think the Ravens are still the most complete team in that division. That's going to show here down the stretch.
Yeah, and the schedule, as you mentioned, man, a lot easier than it was in the first half. Browns, Jets, Bengals, Steelers, and then Bengals again. Now, that last game could have Joe Burrow involved. I understand that, but honestly, can he play better than Joe Flacco at this point? I'm not even sure. So Baltimore's got to be a heavy, heavy favorite in every game remaining, I would guess, the rest of the way. Okay, so was it the best game of the day, you think, in the morning, Vinny? It may have been. Colts win 31-25 over the Atlanta Falcons. Really exciting game. Jonathan Taylor has basically now cemented himself as the #1 running back in the league and in fantasy as well. He moved ahead of Christian McCaffrey again this past week. 32 rushes, 244 yards, 3 touchdowns, and also caught 3 balls for 42 yards as well. But meanwhile, Atlanta stayed in this game throughout, Vinny. Like, they had a real shot to win this game too. So I guess the Colts are feeling a little bit better about this. But as you saw with Daniel Jones struggling a little bit again, boy, they're going to have to lean on Taylor, it feels like, down the stretch.
Yeah, I think there's a few teams that operate based on how their running game operates. I think Detroit is one of them. If you shut down the run, you're going to beat Detroit. If you shut down Jonathan Taylor, you're going to beat the Colts. And you go on and on. I think you do that with the Rams that you have a shot to beat them. And then the Bills, of course, you shut down James Cook, you're going to usually beat the Bills. So that's what it comes down to. Look, that's what part of being a quarterback is, playing off a good running back, throwing downfield, play action, and all that. You're not going to get it done without that. So when I look at Jonathan Taylor, look, should he be an MVP candidate? Yeah. But is it a quarterback award at this point? Yeah. But if the quarterbacks are all kind of muddled up here between Patrick Mahomes and Drake May and now Matthew Stafford, whoever you want to throw into the mix, then you have Taylor as a great chance to win it, because really, who's been more valuable to his team? I mean, he's had a lot of games where he just carried that Colts offense and set things up for Daniel Jones. He's the reason Daniel Jones is looking a lot better than he was in New York just last year.
All right, so the Colts are going to win the South now with Jacksonville losing yesterday. I think that's it. They're minus 425 right now on the money line. Jaguars gave that game away. I mean, honestly, they could have hung in there still with a game with the Colts left, but that's not going to happen. Okay, so tonight's game, Vinny, I mean, this could be the game of the week in the NFL. Great showdown here on Monday Night Football. Eagles visiting the Packers, Lambeau at night on a Monday night. It's going to be fantastic. 45.5 is the total here. This is one I'm just going to enjoy. I think maybe a little bit of an advantage to Green Bay here, but the odds makers are certainly telling us there's none.
Yeah, there's some desperation for Green Bay, certainly after losing to Carolina last week, but the Eagles need to make sure they don't look ahead to the Lions next week. They got to take care of business here. And look, the Packers have a lot of injuries, so that's why I'm siding with the Eagles in this one to pull it out on the road.
All right, plus 1.5 says Vinny. Vinny, have a great rest of your week. Thanks again.
All right, thank you.
SportsGrid Sound Off coming up next. We'll hear from Baker Mayfield of the Buccaneers right after the break.
We now have to figure out if they will be in the playoffs. They're the Super Bowl favorite and have shorter odds to miss the postseason as you and I sit here right now.
Right, but let me ask you this. Do you feel after this 5-4 record, 9 weeks, 10 weeks of the regular season, that their defense is as dominant as it was last year?
But the offense is better.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Fly, Pelican, more like grounded Pelican. The Pelicans are 0-6 to start the season. Their main guys aren't their main guys. And it comes to a point where, what do you do if you are Joe Dumars and the leadership of New Orleans?
Pro Basketball Today, only on SportsGrid.
You want to throw $12, $13 million at Kiffin? That's always a possibility. Summerall, they lost the other night to, in that matchup to UTSA. Or do you go back to potentially the mad scientist and Nick Saban, give him, complete control of the athletic department and see if he can turn it around? We'll see. But whatever they go, they're going to need a coach to hit the ground running.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
His daughter, she's on the OF.
Okay.
She's on the OF.
Is that right?
Yeah, she's on the OF.
So he's got
now.
an OnlyFans daughter and a little son
who says he can beat Curry and LeBron.
And he's coaching a team that was down 72 to
Keep
nothing.
that dude away from polite society.
Okay, by the way, I'm with you. I didn't know any of that is.
Numerous pops gotta go.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Tough week for a few teams in the National Football League, and we'll address that here. We'll hear from Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Also, Myles Garrett, yet another loss for the Browns against the Jets. And also, what happened with the Jaguars giving the game away to the Houston Texans, coaches, players, a whole lot more in this edition of Monday's SportsGrid Sound Off. things we wish we knew during the week, right? Well, I guess the Buccaneers did not have a great week of practice this past week ahead of their home game against the New England Patriots. Patriots win this one 28-23, dominated on the ground. And even though Tampa Bay took an early lead in this one, the Pats stormed back to win. So after the game, interestingly enough, Baker Mayfield opens up a little bit, saying that some things they saw in practice during the week could have potentially led to the outcome on Sunday.
You know, that's what I told the team, told the offense after the game. And at some point, when the stuff comes up during the week, and whether it's mistakes or things we talk about, and then it shows up on Sundays, you have to have some pride about you. You got to have the fear of that failure, of messing up for your teammates when we talk about something. That you got to have that responsibility and accountability for the guys around you, and get it fixed. You know, in tight ball games like this, when you play a good team like the Patriots, little things will get you beat, and that was the case for us on offense today. And case in point, I mean, it starts with me. You know, some throws there that we like to have back, some more completions. The low ball that I gave Cade towards the end there, if I would have stuck it on his chest, he probably would have gotten a first down instead of having to get into a short yardage situation. So it starts with me, but everybody's got to have pride about it too.
Meanwhile, the New England Patriots win, and in the division, so do the Miami Dolphins, and so do the New York Jets. 2 special teams touchdowns leads the Jets to a 27-20 win over the poor Cleveland Browns. Just can't get out of their own way. But there still is hope. There are still a lot of games remaining the rest of the season. Don't count the Browns out even from the playoffs. Here's Myles Garrett on optimism that remains.
Okay, how they feel? You got to suit up. It's still opportunity. There's still a chance. We still have, 8 more games. You never know what can happen. So I'm going to make sure that there's no quitting this team. I haven't seen it before, and it's not going to happen now. So I'm going to make sure everybody mans up and still knows exactly what the directive is.
Kevin said that he's sticking with Dillon Gabriel moving forward. You know, what kind of fight and heart, are you seeing in Dillon, and what do you guys think?
What do I think about what?
What do you think about the fact that you guys are sticking with the status quo, or Kevin's sticking with the status quo and continuing to go with Dillon instead of turning it over to Shedeur?
Quarterback direction has nothing to do with me. I'm worried about the defense and us giving up the points that we did and the first downs we did. Who we stick with the quarterback is up to Kevin.
A lot of money going to Myles Garrett. Still feel bad for this guy. A lot of losing, a lot of years, and a lot of high-level play from him. Okay, meanwhile, what happened to the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday? One of the games I stopped watching completely, thought it was over, and then Houston came back behind Davis Mills and company and scored 26 points on Jacksonville in the fourth. There's no getting around it. I think that loss may have ruined the Jaguars season. I think Liam Cohen agrees.
I was on the headset hearing him call, when you blitz and you're a little susceptible in the back end when you blitz. And then when we 4-man rush, we're not getting home. That's the reality. And that's a hard place as any coach to be in, and players as well at times. So, we got to go watch the tape to see exactly every call, but I didn't necessarily think there was we were putting these guys in really bad positions. You're kind of trying to hold on to a lead and make them earn it. And, we let up too many explosive plays.
Just kind of let it go and give it away is tough. So, it's tough to be in that locker room after a game like that, and guys put so much into it, and to not finish and play our best down the stretch is tough. So, we got to bounce back. We got a long season ahead of us, but definitely have to learn from this and not let this happen again. And we got to be able to close those games out, because you got to win those.
We'll take a quick time out here on Newswire. When we come back, we'll be joined by Jacob Kamaker of USA Today, discussing some of the results in the National Football League. You're watching Newswire here on SportsGrid. On this Monday, we'll be back with more coming up, so make sure you stay with us here on the grid. You can also download the SportsGrid app by just taking out your phone and scanning that QR code. It's available for iOS and Android. The SportsGrid app, streaming our network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We'll be back with a whole lot more on this edition of Newswire next. Don't go away.
Sauce Gardner heading over to the Indianapolis Colts as they go all in on this season and beyond, as I think a lot of people have been noting. That move does not just say, hey, we like what we have this year. It says we like what we have moving forward, and that includes Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback for Dallas. What does that decision to bring in Quinnen Williams say? That means they're poorly ran, but we already knew that.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They didn't panic. They played like a championship team. They came back and destroyed them, probably cost Brian Kelly his job at least a week earlier than it might have happened before. But the fact is they are playing great. But like I say, I like the talent level of all those teams. And I think if you want to have a little bang for your buck and play around with a team that could slide in, Ole Miss might be that team.
The Bowden Blitz. Only on SportsGrid.
Governor calls you out in the football state. You're out.
And it was so funny, too, because after he fired Kelly on Sunday, right, Woodward released a statement that said that, in effect, that he was still in charge of the athletic department. Well, you didn't check with the governor because apparently he had other plans for the athletic department, and you're not in them.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Football contest season is back, and so is the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, Season 2, the sharpest football contest show in the land. Focusing on all three Circus Sports contests and the Westgate Superbook Super Contest, we handicap the games and release our contest picks every week of the season. Featuring Super Contest champions Brady Cannon, James Salinas, and former NFL player Mike Pritchard, all team will have you prepared this season like none other. Check us out every weekend right here on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. If you want to text or call Jacob Kamaker tonight, he's going to be busy because tonight's a really good game for the Green Bay Packers and Philadelphia Eagles. So let's get it in quick while we can. I don't know if he's going to be flying into Lambeau tonight to tailgate, my favorite spot in the country to tailgate, and I've done it many times. Actually thinking about going back there. It's been a while since I've been there, but I digress. Let's bring in Jacob Kamaker here from USA Today. Jacob, before we get to Monday night, let's talk about the team closest in your area, which are the New England Patriots. The Patriots go to Raymond James Stadium and win 28-23. The Bucs went up very early in this one. I saw Egbuka catch a touchdown. I'm like, okay, Bucs probably just going to take care of business in this one. But with that soft schedule that everybody accuses the Patriots have, this was not a soft game, Jacob. They win 28-23. And Drake May getting it done, but I think the talk of the town here is this running back, Travion Henderson, who's finally getting an opportunity to play a lot and making the most of it.
Yeah, I'll be honest, Craig. Coming into this game, I was with you. I thought, hey, this is probably going to be the moment where we see, hey, the Patriots are going to struggle at some point against these higher-end teams. They've played a lot of lower-end opponents so far. But, yeah, they found a way to beat the Buccaneers. And as you mentioned, Henderson was a huge part of that equation. We've been waiting. A lot of NFL fans and Patriots fans especially have been waiting to see what Henderson can do if fully unleashed. Now, the first half of the season, he was kind of finding a role in the offense. It's a difficult learning curve for running backs in Josh McDaniels' offense. Pass protection is very important. So Henderson was a good pass protecting prospect, but it took him time to learn kind of all the calls there. Now, this has been opened up, the opportunity for him because of Ramondre Stevenson's injury. And what Henderson showed off against the Buccaneers was the game-breaking speed that was on display in the preseason. He had 2 long touchdown runs, I believe, of 55 and 69 yards. And, one of the other Patriots touchdowns went 72 yards with Kyle Williams, who looked like he was jetting down the field too. So I think the most encouraging thing coming out of this game for the Patriots is they don't just have Drake May now. They have a couple of guys who can really break big plays, add speed to this offense. So it's unlocking a new dimension, and that's what was the hope when they brought in Henderson, that he would add that speed-based complement power to the powerful Stevenson, and we're seeing that in action. So I'm excited to see what Henderson can do moving forward. His performance is also going to allow Stevenson, who's been out with a toe injury, ample time to recover from that. So by the time you get to the playoffs, the Patriots running back room is actually going to be in good shape, and we just thought a few weeks ago this might be a weakness.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing him play a lot more next year too. I know a lot of fantasy owners of Henderson are like, wait a second, I'm like 2-10 at this point. It's too late for me now, but story for another day. Okay, so I was absolutely shocked here. Not just that the Dolphins won, because it's a division game, you never know, but to see them just dominate the Buffalo Bills like they did yesterday, 30-13. And these kind of performances were pretty common, Jacob, the last few years from Miami, scoring 25, 30 points and, look, not winning a lot of games, but doing enough. And so I guess it's like a complicated question here, because I think Buffalo, this is just a tough game on their schedule. They end up losing. And I think it's probably like a one-off for Miami. Maybe they go back to being a pumpkin like they did against the Ravens. I'm not really sure. But this was a supremely unpredictable outcome for me on Sunday, because even if Miami won, let's just say 30-27, I've seen them play these games before with division games, but they just crushed Buffalo.
Yeah, I think the most confusing part of this game was just watching how bad Buffalo looked offensively for a majority of that game. They just could not figure out that Dolphins defense. They had several fumbles. James Cook and Josh Allen, I think, both lost a fumble when the Bills were getting towards scoring range. So it seemed like every time they had a chance to maybe get through, break through, get a touchdown, maybe make this a game, they squandered the opportunity. Now, I think from Buffalo's perspective, this was just a terrible scheduling spot. They're coming off that big win over the Chiefs. They're riding high. They're puffing their chest out. They're playing a Miami team that was embarrassed by the Ravens, that they haven't lost to since, I think, 2022, or they had lost six, or they had beaten them 6 consecutive times. So I think the Bills maybe didn't take the Dolphins seriously. But as you noted, the Dolphins, they still have the ability to have a good offensive output. When Tua Tagovailoa is avoiding injuries, they can move the ball down the field through the air. And this matchup especially, and this is something that I think I should have paid more attention to going in, the Bills remain leaky against the run. So when you have a guy like Devon Achane who has that game-breaking speed like Travion Henderson, like we just talked about, odds are against a bad run defense, you're going to have him break off a couple long runs. We saw that at the end of the game as the defense got tired. So I think the Dolphins were a tougher matchup for the Bills than we realized. But I think more than anything for Buffalo, this was just a bad scheduling spot. They came out flat. They'll probably use it as motivation going forward, but it's a huge missed opportunity for them because now they're way behind the Patriots in the AFC East as the season goes on.
Yeah, and Buffalo could be looking at road games in the playoffs, which they haven't had to do in a bit, but that could be the case. As New England has just been absolutely fantastic, and so with the Jets out of it and the Dolphins out of it, as you could see, Buffalo's still right there. But it looks like New England at this point, if they can just hang on to some wins at the end of the season, they could end up winning the East, which I did not think would happen at the beginning of the year. All right, so my sleeper team at the beginning of the season came to an end yesterday. All the Jaguars had to do was beat the Houston Texans, and they were just crushing them. What happened here, Jacob? I mean, come on, 36-29, and I understand the final score was 30-29, and Houston scored on a defensive touchdown at the end. I get that. But the Jaguars can't get a stop on defense after playing so well in the first half. I mean, this is a stunner to me that this happened. And now, Houston kind of finds themselves a little bit back in the mix. I don't think that they're going to get there. I still think that Jacksonville can make the playoffs after this one. But if they don't, they're going to look back on this one, Jacob, and say we blew it.
Absolutely, especially with how that game started where they were forcing turnovers. I think they forced Davis Mills into an interception on one of his first 2 passes of the game, and that really set the stage for the Jaguars to have what could have been a dominant win. But look, I think Davis Mills is a good backup quarterback, but he should not be the kind of guy that can lead your team to 26 points in the final quarter. And yeah, you could say that was 20 because the last minute defensive touchdown didn't need to happen, but still, the Jaguars' defense just kind of folded in on itself, and their offense really wasn't that impressive either. I mean, we're talking about a team that had Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. They both were able to move the ball a little bit, but they weren't able to consistently get the ball downfield. Now, I know the Jaguars were missing Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter in this game, and Jacoby Myers had just come over from the trade. So maybe we should have expected them to struggle against this Texans defense. But I think what ultimately undid them was their inability to really run the ball and grind the clock late in the game. Because if they could have just sustained a couple of drives in that second half, would have been much harder for Davis Mills and company to come back. But yeah, this was certainly a disappointing loss for the Jaguars.
Yeah, and they were minus money to make the playoffs going into the game, and now they're plus money today, plus 138. It's just the nature of the division, and they still have a shot to be the last team in, I think, in the AFC, but that's the best it's going to get for them at this point. All right, meanwhile, credit to the Bears. They came back and they beat the Giants. I also would say I think the Giants blew this one too, Jacob, and for those people betting on first coach or next coach fired, I mean, honestly, I don't know how I'm back here on the show tomorrow with Brian Daboll as the head coach. Sorry to say. He'll be a great offensive coordinator. He'll end up somewhere else. But, I mean, you can't dominate a team like you did, just like Jacksonville did, by the way, for this long and let Chicago come back and win the way they did. So credit to the Bears. They're going to stick around in this thing, Jacob, a little bit longer. They still have a shot at the playoffs. And the Giants have just closed up shop after yesterday's game.
Yeah, and this is the second time we've seen the Giants really blow a game late. There was the game against Denver where they allowed the Broncos to score so many points in the fourth quarter. But at this point, we kind of know what the Giants are. They're carried by Jackson Dart, and they were carried by Cam Scadaboo on offense. The minute Dart went out of this game and Russell Wilson had to check in, Giants fans everywhere lost hope. I have a couple of coworkers who are Giants fans, and they were like, this is it. And they couldn't move the ball, and then their defense just allowed the Bears to move it down on them too. So Dart, if he misses time with this concussion and Wilson has to play, it's going to get ugly. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I think Daboll's time in New York is coming to an end. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, maybe at some point this week. I mean, people are like calling for it today, but it doesn't always work like that in the NFL on Monday. It actually usually is the day off tomorrow. All right. Appreciate it, Jacob. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Craig. Take care.
All right. Up next, one of the hottest teams in the NFL, Seattle Seahawks. Donnie Rightside weighs in on how far Seattle can go this season. We'll be right back.
Sauce Gardner heading over to the Indianapolis Colts as they go all in on this season and beyond. As I think a lot of people have been noting, that move does not just say, hey, we like what we have this year. It says we like what we have moving forward, and that includes Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback for Dallas. What does that decision to bring in Quinnen Williams say? That means they're poorly ran, but we already knew that.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They didn't panic. They played like a championship team. They came back and destroyed them, probably cost Brian Kelly his job at least a week earlier than it might have happened before. But the fact is they are playing great. But like I say, I like the talent level of all those teams. And I think you want to have a little bang for your buck and play around with a team that could slide in. Ole Miss might be that team.
The Bowden Blitz. Only on SportsGrid.
Governor calls you out in the football state. You're out.
And it was so funny, too, because after he fired Kelly on Sunday, right, Woodward released a statement that said that, you know, in effect, that he was still in charge of the athletic department. Well, you didn't check with the governor because apparently he had other plans for the athletic department, and you're not in them.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Football contest season is back, and so is the Las Vegas Football Contest Show. Season 2, the sharpest football contest show in the land. Focusing on all three Circus Sports contests and the Westgate Superbook Super Contest, we handicap the games and release our contest picks every week of the season. Featuring Super Contest champions Brady Cannon, James Salinas, and former NFL player Mike Pritchard, all team will have you prepared this season like none other. Check us out every weekend right here on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Breaking news from the National Football League. As Jacob Kamaker and I were just discussing, the league usually, has their Monday press conferences, and then Tuesday is usually when they make any changes in the NFL. But look, the Giants are, basically in a spot where they're getting ahead of it. What am I talking about here? I'll get to the point. ESPN is reporting that Brian Daboll has been fired as head coach of the Giants. Donnie Rightside, what timing for Donnie to be here with us to break it all down. He thought we were just going to do his Eagles tonight on Monday Night Football, but we get to the Giants first. Donnie, this is the least surprising thing to happen here on a Monday. They blew the game against the Broncos. They absolutely blew the game yesterday, and that's what's going to get you fired in the National Football League when you're already on thin ice. Look, if the Giants would have just split those two games, I think that he would be okay, and I also think that he had no future there. By the way, he's going to be fine. He'll be an offensive coordinator for some team in the NFL next season, but time is clearly up when you have your defense blowing games like that.
Loved him as a Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator. When the Giants hired him, I thought that was a very sound move, but it was quick right away after that first year that he wasn't going to cut it anymore. And what gets you fired in the NFL these days? Certainly bad records, embarrassing the franchise. I get that. But when you finally think you have your franchise quarterback and you are not protecting him, and he's been checked for concussions 4 times in the season, and he's saying this season is lost, but yet I'm continuing to call play after play after play, which has my superstar quarterback running around like a tailback in the middle of the field getting blasted. Yesterday, that concussion sends him out. And you're right about this. Competency still allows you to win that football game. You had the lead. You should have won. It's no surprise that when you continuously blow double-digit leads in the NFL, it's because of you, not the players, after a while. No surprise he got fired today for me, Craig.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny that you bring that up. I didn't really consider that. Do you think that, like, if I gave you a pie chart of 100%, would you say that the loss is 90%, and then you're right about Dart. He has him running up the middle constantly. I'm surprised that he hasn't been hurt to this point. Do you think that that is a bigger factor in that, or do you think, strictly speaking, that if Dart has a concussion yesterday, but the Giants win, Dable still has a job today? Probably, right?
Yeah, I think the bigger deal is him actually blowing those leads. Because as a coach, when you have double-digit leads, the chances of you winning that football game, I mean, what worst-case scenario was 75-25 or 50-50, not losing just about every game you have a lead in. That's going to get you fired. But also when you start to weigh, hey, we're not getting the best coaching philosophy out here, and B, what are you doing with my quarterback? And if I think I have a franchise guy, he's not going to make it past year 2 because he had his 4th concussion already. Those things all weigh into it. Because I would say yesterday, if they won that football game and Dart didn't get hurt, he's not getting fired today. But that's a double combination. Embarrassing loss, and your starting quarterback went down who's young, and you're trying to protect, you're out the door quicker than that.
Yeah, and look, he'll be in Houston will probably need a new offensive coordinator next year. He'll be there, or finds the Jets, some team. He'll be perfectly fine for his future. Okay, so now let's get to one of the big surprises in the NFL this season. New England is that team in the AFC. Seattle, Donnie, is that team in the NFC. This game was over before it started. I don't know how people thought that. I mean, I know Jacoby Brissett was playing okay, but did they not watch the last 15 years of football? Seattle just destroyed these guys 44-22. Most points in the first half of a game this season, 38 points, a really impressive performance. And by the way, I will say this, Seattle did try to give that game back to the Cardinals a little bit. I was watching, they just kept turning the ball over. It's just the Cardinals couldn't do anything. But in the end, Seattle's going to be a playoff team. Do they have like a run in them, or are they just that team that has a surprising season, goes on the road, and then loses in game 1 of the playoffs?
That's what we're worried about, Craig. But also, we have measuring stick games in the NFL that come up at just the right time. Because if you look at next Sunday, it's the Rams and the Seahawks. You said, well, Donnie, you've been watching all along. Seattle, they look really good. Understand this. Their loss opening day to the 49ers, quality team, but they lost that game. The Buccaneers, they lost it at home 38-35. You say, well, what about the other wins? Steelers, Saints, Cardinals, Jaguars, Texans, Commanders, Cardinals. I need a big-time win. You go on the road this week, I'm a believer. Same way, Craig, you just talked about New England. I needed a measuring stick game after that 6-game win streak. Go on the road and beat Tampa Bay, who's the division leader, after a bye, and then come back and talk to me. So impressed with New England. Now go out and impress me, Seattle, with a win against the Rams.
Yeah, meanwhile, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson get talked about a lot as the best wide receivers in the NFL. It's time to put Jackson Smith and Jigba in that conversation. Man, he has been awesome. And those who play fantasy football know that. He's going to be a top 5 pick, I think, going into next year's draft. He's been arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL this season. Their win total, by the way, is high as any team right now in the NFL, 12.5. They're playing great football, but as Donnie mentioned, there's going to be a team that they face this week which is going to determine a lot, so let's get to that. The Rams basically kept playing a little back and forth with the 49ers for a while until they eventually just took a lead and ran away with it, 42-26. Matthew Stafford this morning, Donnie, is 3-1 on FanDuel to win the MVP. He's tied with Drake May. And, look, there's a shot that I think Stafford could win this thing, which is, kind of crazy. We didn't have that at the beginning of the year, 25 touchdowns, but this is staggering. 2 interceptions on the season to those 25 touchdowns. I didn't even think he would play a game this season, Donnie. I'm being honest with you. I thought he was done. His back.
Exactly.
He didn't play at all in the preseason. I thought he was finished.
That was always the play because you say, oh, everybody loves the Rams in the summer. What happens if Matthew Stafford starts the season injured and maybe continues or breaks down by week 5? He looks sensational, Craig. 25-2, that offense is an absolute machine. And what's not to like about the Rams? Great pass rush, good secondary, good offensive line, dominant wide receivers, fabulous tailback, and a quarterback that's playing like he's a 27-year-old back in Detroit, throwing the football all over the field. You can't tell me that arm strength is down. He looks great at this point. Big game versus Seattle this weekend. But this is the one team in the NFL that I think has every component you need, right down to the head coach who's a great play caller. They just have to stay healthy, which again, sometimes in the NFL, it is the war of attrition. But you're not watching Rams games right now go like, oh, I think they're faltering the playoffs. They have everything you need to win at home and on the road the way they play.
All right, take your heart out of it tonight, Packers and Eagles. I think it's going to be a great game. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game tonight. And with Philly coming off a bye, I feel like they're in a good spot. I feel like the Packers have to get it going somehow offensively. So I'm hoping this is one of the better Monday night games on the schedule. It definitely shapes up to be, at least on paper.
I mean, hard-hitting superstars all over the place, cold weather conditions at Lambeau, but understand this, Craig. We've been around the block a long time. That's an 80-20 ticket split on the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're still underdogs in this game. The old-school handicapper goes, throw everything out the window and just take the Green Bay Packers tonight to salvage their season and maybe be that number 1 overall seed in the NFC playoffs when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I took the Packers to win the Super Bowl. If they don't win this one tonight, I'm not going to have all that confidence I had earlier in the year. That's for sure. All right, Donnie, thanks. Have a great day. We'll see you in the early line tomorrow.
Sauce Gardner heading over to the Indianapolis Colts as they go all in on this season and beyond. As I think a lot of people have been noting, that move does not just say, hey, we like what we have this year. It says we like what we have moving forward, and that includes Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback for Dallas. What does that decision to bring in Quinnen Williams say? That means they're poorly ran, but we already knew that.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They didn't panic. They played like a championship team. They came back and destroyed them, probably cost Brian Kelly his job at least a week earlier than it might have happened before. But the fact is they are playing great. But like I say, I like the talent level of all those teams. And I think if you want to have a little bang for your buck and play around with a team that could slide in, Ole Miss might be that team.
The Bowden Blitz. Only on SportsGrid.
Governor calls you out in the football state. You're out.
And it was so funny, too, because after he fired Kelly on Sunday, right, Woodward released a statement that said that, in effect, that he was still in charge of the athletic department. Well, you didn't check with the governor because apparently he had other plans for the athletic department, and you're not in them.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Football contest season is back, and so is the Las Vegas Football Contest Show. Season 2, the sharpest football contest show in the land. Focusing on all 3 Circus Sports contests and the Westgate Superbook Super Contest, we handicap the games and release our contest picks every week of the season. Featuring Super Contest champions Brady Cannon, James Salinas, and former NFL player Mike Pritchard, all team will have you prepared this season like none other. Check us out every weekend right here on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to NewsWire, recapping our top story of the day, a new head coaching change in the National Football League. Another coach fired this morning or this afternoon, depending on when you're watching. Here on the East Coast, Brian Daboll has been fired as head coach of the Giants. Basically a record of 20 wins, 40 losses, a tie mixed in there. Couldn't win a lot of the big games and blew a lot of games this season, despite the team drafting Jackson Dart and him playing well, still not finding a way to close games out defensively. So he is out. Offensive coordinator Mike Kafka is going to take over. And certainly the Giants it would appear that they have their quarterback. It would appear if Malik Neighbors comes back healthy, they'll have their receiver. And the Giants, generally speaking, have been a good defense all season and a pretty good front. But wins are at a premium in the National Football League, and so Daboll will be looking for a job. Now, the next question for him will be, what does he do next? I think it's pretty obvious with all the success that he had in Buffalo, especially with Josh Allen, would lead him maybe right back to the Buffalo Bills, or potentially maybe an offensive coordinator job in the future that could happen either at some point as an advisor this season or maybe even next season as well. So we will see, but Giants will be rolling with Mike Kafka as their interim head coach moving forward. Meanwhile, a lot of interim coaches in the college football landscape right now. What an incredible finish, by the way, as Indiana keeps their college football playoff hopes alive with a last-second win in Penn State. What we're going to do is take a quick look at what happened in college football in Week 11 and take a look at Week 12. Let's check in with our buddy Rich Sermonello, who has a recap of everything that happened in college football. And with the rankings set to come out tomorrow, we'll get a better idea as to what the landscape looks like. We're, folks, just about a month away from getting this all sorted out for the next edition of the college football playoff here in 2025 and 2026. Here's Rich.
Craig, we have another weekend of college football to discuss. I'm going to keep it on the Big Ten and the East Coast. That's what really struck me over the weekend, and as we look ahead to Week 12 as well. First off, Indiana-Penn State, just a remarkable game. That, for me, for the Hoosiers, was a championship drive. They have been trucking opponents. They got tested this time against Penn State. That final drive, that Fernando Mendoza pass to Omar Cooper was an unbelievable catch. That's what championship teams are made of. Perhaps a Heisman moment for Mendoza. I think we're really looking at two main contenders for the Heisman. Shortest odds for Mendoza, Julian Sayin of Ohio State. Those two very likely to meet in Indianapolis in early December for the Big Ten title and probably for the Heisman Trophy as well. Now, Penn State, great effort. They've been showing good effort ever since firing James Franklin. I think if you're a Nittany Lion fan right now, first of all, be proud of that effort, but also perhaps become a James Madison fan. I'm going to go on record right now. I think Bob Chesney might be the best fit, JMU's head coach, for Penn State. He's a PA guy. He has come through the ranks, relatively young at 48. He's a builder of programs. And oh, by the way, the last time James Madison's head coach left, he worked out pretty well. Curt Cignetti is the Indiana coach. He was previously with the Dukes. Chesney, 8-1, just year 4 for JMU at the FBS level, year 2 for Chesney. They have a shot of getting the group of 5 playoff spot. Now, keep it in Pennsylvania. Pitt, kind of the center of the universe for the next few weeks when it comes to the playoffs. They host Notre Dame this week. They have Georgia Tech next week. They wrap it up with Miami. Pitt has been a great story. This is a team that was struggling in September. Pat Narduzzi makes the switch to the true freshman quarterback, Mason Heinschel. And all they've done is win 5 straight games. They now have a shot to win the ACC. So both Pitt and Notre Dame could be in the playoffs once we get to December. Coaches in the Big Ten, I love the move, Craig, of Wisconsin. They held on to Luke Fickell, 3-6 season, very disappointing. But Wisconsin rewards him with a big victory over Washington. Now, the seeds of futures for me begin long before we'll see odds for 2026. I think this kind of a move for Wisconsin to keep Fickell. I think they're going to commit to the transfer portal, build up that offense, which has been atrocious all year. Defense under Mike Tressel has been great. Saw that again in the 13-10 win over Washington. But the seeds of futures begin right now. That confidence in Fickell, that commitment to building up through the transfer portal. I think that's going to work in their favor next year. Two players, by the way, combined for 30 tackles, Morgan Posa and Cooper Catalano, both true freshmen. So I think the future is actually bright in Wisconsin. Great move by the Badgers to hold on to Fickle. We'll see what happens in 2026.
Sauce Gardner heading over to the Indianapolis Colts as they go all in on this season and beyond. As I think a lot of people have been noting, that move does not just say, hey, we like what we have this year. It says we like what we have moving forward, and that includes Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback for Dallas. What does that decision to bring in Quinnen Williams say? That means they're poorly ran, but we already knew that.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
They didn't panic. They played like a championship team. They came back and destroyed them, probably cost Brian Kelly his job at least a week earlier than it might have happened before. But the fact is they are playing great. But like I say, I like the talent level of all those teams. And I think you want to have a little bang for your buck and play around with a team that could slide in. Ole Miss might be that team.
The Bowden Blitz. Only on SportsGrid.
Governor calls you out in a football state. You're out.
And it was so funny, too, because after he fired Kelly on Sunday, right, Woodward released a statement that said that, in effect, that he was still in charge of the athletic department. Well, you didn't check with the governor because apparently he had other plans for the athletic department, and you're not in them.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Football contest season is back, and so is the Las Vegas Football Contest Show. Season 2, the sharpest football contest show in the land. Focusing on all three Circus Sports contests and the Westgate Superbook Super Contest, we handicap the games and release our contest picks every week of the season. Featuring Super Contest champions Brady Cannon, James Salinas, and former NFL player Mike Pritchard, all team will have you prepared this season like none other. Check us out every weekend right here on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to have Adam Kaplan, our SportsGrid insider, talking about our big story of the day, which comes from the National Football League, as Brian Daboll has been fired by the Giants after a few lackluster seasons, and specifically a couple of very lackluster losses over the last couple of weeks, 2 out of the last 3 weeks, to be specific. Adam, I think Daboll probably wasn't going to come back anyway next season. But this is when anything like this happens, from covering the league, I know from covering sports too, it comes from the owner, right? Like this is the spot where the owner steps in and says, hey, we can't have this kind of stuff happening. Where do the Giants go from here? It seems to me that they feel like they have their quarterback in tow. They'll get their wide receiver back next season. Their front four is pretty good too. So it's not one of these jobs where I guess like New Orleans, where that you're in for another long year, the Jets, where you're in for another long year. The Giants conceivably have a few pieces in place, right?
They do. Malik Neighbors will come back from his ACL injury next year, so they'll get him back. He's a stud talent. Scatabo, unfortunately, as we know, had that bad injury. He'll be back next year. Look, there are some pieces, as he said. Now, here's why it's going to be an attractive job. It's the quarterback. Jackson Dart is well respected around the league. He's gotten off to a pretty good start. Look, he's had some starts where he could play better, but he is a rookie quarterback. He's well ahead of schedule. He's shown enough to show that he can play in this league. So, Craig, when you look at the offensive coordinator types like Joe Brady of the Bills, he's done a really good job after getting fired by the Panthers in season, unfortunately, 3 years ago. But he's doing a great job. You look at Matt Nagy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator. Andy Reid calls the plays. Nagy did make the playoffs as a head coach for the Bears. He got Mitch Trubisky in the playoffs. He's coached quarterbacks. Andy Reid told me once that Matt Nagy, of all the guys who work for him, would be the best head coach that in terms of candidates that he had. So Nagy deserves probably another shot But bottom line is, they'll look to continue to develop the quarterback. But one thing I do want to say about Daboll, remember, Craig, when they made the playoffs in 2022? Remember talking to someone with the Giants who they were not thinking that they'd be in the playoffs that year. It was kind of a turnaround year. Figure things out with Daniel Jones. You had the change of coaching staff. And they stunned it. They stunned everybody, made the playoffs. Won a playoff game at Minnesota, by the way. Won the game pretty handily. Then it's been downhill ever since. No winning record since then. And it was a disaster. And Craig, the other part I would add to this is teams always know. Like you could say, oh, they could have done this at the end of the season. Why wait when you know you're going to fire the head coach? Like that, they knew this. This is something they just woke up in the morning. John Mara and the Mara family and the Tisch family said, you know what, let's fire him now. This has been on their mind to do this, and they did it now. So, and Mike Kafka, the OC, who, by the way, got the play calling back this year. Daboll took it away from him. He gave him back to him this year. He's supposedly going to be the interim head coach. And, Mike, talking to people, know him. He wants to be a head coach. I know it's tough. You don't have Malik Neighbors. Dart's got the concussion. It's going to be hard for them to be competitive, but this is an audition for Mike Kafka, and good luck to him.
Yeah, definitely so. And Joe Schoen, I would assume, who's the general manager right now, Adam, he was the one who hired, of course, Daboll, and also, traded Saquon Barkley famously too. And unfortunately, a lot of that stuff for him showed up on video, which has kind of destroyed the idea of Hard Knocks at this point. It's why nobody wants to do it because of that. I don't know. Greer got fired less than 10 days ago. The Giants could just hang on till the end of the year, but I guess what, the next month or so, they'll probably just let everybody know he won't be back too.
Well, so let's go back to the Jets last year. Team that plays in the same stadium. So they fired Robert Saleh first, and then later, before the end, they fired Joe Douglas, general manager, who's now in Philly as one of Howie Roseman's assistants in the personnel department. So sometimes you fire them both at the same time. Sometimes you separate them. But Joe Schoen's the architect of this team. Now, by the way, the ownership hired the general manager and the head coach. It's just because Schoen and Daboll worked together with the Bills, they were able to come in together, more or less the same. But it just didn't end well. And look, remember with Saquon Barkley, he wasn't traded. He actually signed as a free agent.
Right.
And they decided, Craig, like they were not going to pay big bucks. You never know when you go to the NFL's best offensive line. Obviously, he's going to be better than he sets a record for one season through the Super Bowl. By the way, Jonathan Taylor might be pushing at this point. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, look, it's been a nightmare for the Tisch family and the Mara family for many years now. They were once really the epitome of what the NFL should look like in terms of success, but they've been downtrodden for so many years ever since Tom Coughlin's been fired, and they've been on the downward slide.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to ask you, who was the last coach of the Giants to have success? Because after Coughlin, Ben McAdoo, Steve Spagnuolo, Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge, Brian Daboll, zero success. The only one on that list that I would say that has a prominent role right now in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken, is Spagnuolo, who's still great as a coordinator, right? Yeah. But beyond, beyond that, not a heck of a lot. Okay, so you have a big takeaway from watching yesterday's games? I thought the early games were great. Late games, not as much. Night game, not so much too. But things went according to plan with the exception of Buffalo getting crushed, right?
Oh, boy, they were bad yesterday. But no, I want to talk about the Lions. This is a big story because you don't typically see a team that's 5-3. Now they're 6-3. They beat the Commanders in Washington. But the head coach, Dan Campbell, for the second time in his career, took over the offensive play calling. And Craig, I could tell you my report that, it's been 8 years ago since I put this out. So John Morton was with the Jets, who's now the Lions OC. And the players kind of revolted, didn't like the scheme. They felt he was too inflexible, and he was fired after one season 8 years ago as a Jets OC. So you fast forward to now, Dan Campbell had seen enough of their offense. After the really bad first game at Green Bay, they seemed to rebound. But certain things were happening. They couldn't figure out the touches for the running backs well enough until, of course, Dan Campbell did yesterday. Jameson Williams had been mostly a non-factor until yesterday.
That's the one. Yeah.
He was phenomenal. Remember, he signed his extension. Like, they stuck by Jameson Williams.
I agree.
A slow start to his career. He had to grow up a little bit, but he's a stud talent. And they were remarkable. It felt like if they really cared, they could have scored 60 yesterday against the Commanders. I mean, it was that dominant. There's no way that Dan Campbell gives it the play calling. After a game like this, I know it's only one game. And look, he could have two bad games in a row, then you revisit it. But right now, there's just no way you could give it up. He was phenomenal. And that things were brewing, though, because some of the players' comments the last couple of weeks were a little bit, wow, okay, what's really going on here? But to do this at 5-3, I give Dan Campbell credit. He's not willing to settle for anything. And that was a huge move in a very competitive NFC.
So what happens in this spot in the NFL to somebody, a staff member like Morton? What role does he have right now? Like, what does he do?
So what happens is he'll be, Craig, on the headset. Dan Campbell actually talked about this after the game. The way that I understand it is, whether it's a D coordinator, offense coordinator, you sit them down, you tell them, this is what I want to do. They could get mad all they want, but if they want to keep their job and not get fired, it could obviously happen after the season, or he could be reassigned. You be a pro. Morton's been around a long time. He's been through a lot. He's coached at the college level and the pro level, and you help your head coach out. Now, by the way, they're running Ben Johnson's scheme, whatever they've tweaked, but it's Ben Johnson's scheme. And Morton was with Ben Johnson for 1 year in 2022 until he left again. But the bottom line is this is a big move. It's a bold move, and one that absolutely worked against Washington. But you know what? They play in Philly Sunday night. We'll see how it does.
Wow. That's a great game coming up Sunday night. Yeah, for me, it's all about Jamison Williams. I watched the game yesterday, and it just seemed like they were planning to get him the ball, like in different schemes, running him over the middle and running him outside. And you mentioned the extension. Like, how do you have a guy like that and not use it? Nothing against Amon-Ra St. Brown. To me, he's top 3 guy in the NFL, maybe top 3 player in the NFL. This guy's blocking guys like crazy. He's a phenomenal player, but explosive plays are what wins, right? Like, you have to have that.
They do, and he is their playmaker. And you look and Sam Laporta's phenomenal, number 87, their tight end, one of the top 3 lines in football. Their offense should be better. It should be the best in the National Football League, and clearly it's not until this game.
Yeah, I still think Detroit is going to be there in the end against somebody. We'll see. All right, let's take a quick break with Adam. We'll be back with more here on, of course, NewsWire, as we break down everything that happened. In case you missed it, Adam and I discussing the Giants firing head coach Brian Daboll. But we'll have more on everything else in the NFL, including tonight's game, when we come back next. Don't go away.
Starts off on a positive note of getting Lamar Jackson back Thursday night, which was great. He threw for 200 yards, did not look rusty at all. He only rushed for 15, but he didn't really need that. Lamar Jackson also threw for 4 touchdowns, 2 of which going to Mark Andrews. So guess who's back and relative again at the tight end position now that Lamar's back? Oh, wait, it's Mark Andrews. No kidding. I mean, the guy just catches touchdowns. It's Lamar's favorite guy in the red zone.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If Jacoby Brissett was playing bad football for the past 3 weeks, Kyler Murray will be fully healthy, ready to go. Can't wait to get him on the field at Seattle and try to resurrect our season. Now you have Jacoby Brissett playing really good football. Putting Kyler Murray back in right now because he wasn't playing good football doesn't make any sense. The perfect storm here for Arizona. Hey, Kyler, going on IR takes the pressure off you. And Jacoby, you deserve the start. Go ahead and start, kid.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
And the amazing thing you're going to say about Tom Izzo for the jump is, Tom Izzo don't duck anybody. You want to hear who they have to play preseason? Kentucky, Duke, UNC, and Arkansas. This is not the Jimmy Boeheim Don't Leave New York Carrier Dome Classic. This guy plays people.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
We now have to figure out if they will be in the playoffs. They're the Super Bowl favorite and have shorter odds to miss the postseason as you and I sit here right now.
Right, but let me ask you this. Do you feel after this 5-4 record, 9 weeks, 10 weeks of the regular season, that their defense is as dominant as it was last year?
No, but the offense is better.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. All right, Adam, I mean, schedule aside, I mean, they've done everything. The New England Patriots at the top of your circle of trust here, 8 wins. I still don't know what a playoff game is going to look like for them. I still am not sure that in a year, you go from 4 wins or 5 to 12, that you can go all the way to the Super Bowl. But I give them a ton of credit for what they did yesterday, going to Tampa Bay, trailing early in the game, finally handing the reins over to this running back. I don't know what took so long, but they finally did it. And now the Patriots not only look like a playoff team, they look like a team that could even host a game, Adam, maybe even win a game in Foxborough in December or January. Never thought that would be the case.
This is hard to believe. And it's funny. This has got Jim Harbaugh vibes all over it, what he did with the Chargers last year. It's remarkable. And Mike Vrabel's, that's where I'm getting at. Mike Vrabel's a phenomenal head coach. Just incredible. And what he has done there with quite frankly, not a lot of talent. And I know, look, Drake May is well ahead of schedule. I mean, I know this staff, when they took over, because they watched his tape, they saw a lot of tools, but they thought he was a ways away. Well, Josh McDaniels, you could say whatever you want as a head coach. He's bad. He knows how to coach quarterbacks. He just does a great job of understanding what works and what doesn't work. From a technical standpoint, he's doing a great job. These young receivers are coming out of nowhere. And you mentioned Travion Henderson. Now, other than short yardage carriage, where it was ridiculous because Stevenson wasn't playing with that toe injury, he had a touchdown run right up the middle and the one off tackle to the left. Watch him if you get to see the highlights. He gets low, and he was off to the races. He was, by the way, Travion Henderson, for the people I spoke to for this draft, the best pass protection back for this draft. He had a little bit of trouble getting started. I'll be interested to see what they do with him and Stevenson when Stevenson gets healthy. But, yeah, they are phenomenal. And, by the way, maybe the NFL's best run defense. They had a great free agency. Give Elliott Wolf credit. Ron Son, Hall of Fame general manager of the Packers. They're doing a great job. And I'll admit it, I did not like the over 8.5. I just didn't. I'm like, how could you do this with such a roster? But, Craig, coaching matters, and that's what we learned from this.
Yeah, I didn't think New England was much better than Miami, if at all. I thought Miami would be, honestly better than them. Yeah, I mean, I just didn't, and here they are. And you're right, not giving up 50 yards rushing to any team in the NFL this season. All right, so before we get to the Rams, who are legit, what do we make of Seattle at this point? Are you outside of a home game at Lumen, like? Can that, because they're going to make the playoffs, but is that team going to go on the road and win a playoff game? Do we need to see anything more from them? They beat up on all these bad teams, that's for sure.
I know. But, Craig, here's the thing. You mentioned that. Historically, there's some years where they're just not good on the road. They're 4-0 on the road. You can make all you want about who they've played. But a league that's got so much competitive balance, or parity, if you will, they've won everywhere. I did pick them in my preseason picks to be a wild card team. I didn't pick them to win the NFC West. They still might not, but right now they're the number 1 seed in the NFC. But again, the Eagles play tonight against the Packers. But yeah, this has been one of those. Where, by the way, this is what Mike McDonald, the head coach, wanted when he fired Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator, who ran an 11 personnel team. I mean, it's 3 receivers, 1 back, 1 tight end, heavy passing. He didn't want that, and he fired him, and he brought in Clint Kubiak. Clint Kubiak, he knows this West Coast scheme very well, obviously from his dad, and they're heavy 12 personnel. JSN having another great year. He's proven he can play in any scheme. Good. And Zach Charbonnet has been a factor at running back, which he had not been prior to the season. And they're so good defensively, great scheme, great execution. Craig, they're another team that can make a run. Like, see, this is what I tell people. Remember what market you're in. If your team makes the playoffs, this is 1 year. You could win it. The Eagles won the Raiders won in 1980, beating the Eagles in the Super Bowl. They're a wild card team. If you get in, you could absolutely get on a run and win the Super Bowl this year. That's the kind of league it is.
No, I mean, there's just, and by the way, there's no, the dominant team, Buffalo, they lose. Dominant team, Detroit, they lose last week. I mean, you have no idea in the National Football League. Okay, so are we headed toward the same ending to the season? Let's go with a flip here. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, boy, it sure seems that way. It seems like we're headed toward maybe 2 games against Baltimore, maybe losing both, finishing 9-8, squeaking in, losing in the first round again. Like, I mean, I hate to have that conversation because Tomlin's been incredible as the coach of the Steelers, but I feel like it's the exact same thing again with them. Doesn't matter who's a quarterback, who's a receiver, who's running back. It's the same season.
Right. Well, let me tell you one thing, though, we need to mention. Mike Tomlin and the Steelers have not won a playoff game since 2016. They how many buildings would be able to keep your job if you haven't won a playoff game? Marvin Lewis would make the playoffs. He got fired. They never won a playoff game with him as head coach. I get it. Tomlin is a very good head coach, but at some point, you've got to take responsibility for this thing. Like the quarterback position under Rodgers struggled. Aaron himself said he didn't play well. We know that. Their defense has not been anywhere near as good as they thought it would be, particularly on the back end. Arthur Smith, for as good as he is in the run game, pass game concepts, it's not working. Now they've got a 1-game lead here. All of a sudden, the Ravens are 4-5. They're trying to pull off almost a miracle here. Only four teams in 55 years almost, since 1970, have made the playoffs after starting 1-5. And what's funny about that is 3 of them have been the last 15 years. So we'll see what happens. Andy Reid's team did it in 2015. They're 1-5, then wound up winning 10 in a row. So anyone could turn it around. And the Ravens are doing it, man. You know why, Craig? Their defense. Everyone on the 53-man roster and defense was available for this game, and it showed it. They did a great job against the Vikings, no question.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we focused on the good. Let's go to the bad. Continue on. We did Pittsburgh. Let's do Minnesota here. I'm watching this game. I'm thinking to myself, why is this happening? Why can't they get the ball to Jefferson? I know McCarthy's young and he's had a few quarters here of good football, but it felt like the organization was even questioning when he was coming back, when Wentz was hurt or not hurt. And it's not all about the quarterback. I still believe Flores is one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, but I'm not huge on what I'm seeing from the Vikings here. And I know they like Brosmer, who they brought in, and I'm kind of wondering maybe at the end of the year if he even gets a look, but that would just throw everything in flux. I know with that team too. Okay, so it's McCarthy or bust, right, from here on out?
He's got to play. Listen, he didn't play as a rookie. He played in one preseason game against the Raiders, right? He's got to play. He's coming off an injury, a mild high ankle sprain, 4 to 6 week injury. So he's got to play. They've got the talent around him. You got a couple offensive linemen hurt, but overall, he's just got to play better, and he's just got to play. It's not even about the playoffs right now. They've got to develop him. They surprised a lot of people taking him in the first round last year, and now he's got to play. He's got to play better to prove them right.
All right, Adam, great stuff as always. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Starts off on a positive note of getting Lamar Jackson back Thursday night, which was great. He threw for 200 yards, did not look rusty at all. He only rushed for 15, but he didn't really need that. Lamar Jackson also threw for 4 touchdowns, 2 of which going to Mark Andrews. So guess who's back and relative again at the tight end position now that Lamar's back? Oh, wait, it's Mark Andrews. No kidding. I mean, the guy just catches touchdowns. It's Lamar's favorite guy in the red zone.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
If Jacoby Brissett was playing bad football for the past 3 weeks, Kyler Murray will be fully healthy, ready to go. Can't wait to get him on the field at Seattle and try to resurrect our season. Now you have Jacoby Brissett playing really good football. Putting Kyler Murray back in right now because he wasn't playing good football doesn't make any sense. The perfect storm here for Arizona. Hey, Kyler, going on IR takes the pressure off you. And Jacoby, you deserve the start. Go ahead and start, kid.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
And the amazing thing you're going to say about Tom Izzo for the jump is, Tom Izzo don't duck anybody. You want to hear who they have to play preseason? Kentucky, Duke, UNC, and Arkansas. This is not the Jimmy Boeheim Don't Leave New York Carrier Dome Classic. This guy plays people.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
We now have to figure out if they will be in the playoffs. They're the Super Bowl favorite and have shorter odds to miss the postseason as you and I sit here right now.
Right, but let me ask you this. Do you feel after this 5-4 record, 9 weeks, 10 weeks of the regular season, that their defense is as dominant as it was last year?
No, but the offense is better.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. As we get ready to wrap up the show, the Indianapolis Colts have a new owner, so to speak, who seems to be pushing all the right buttons. Also, the right buttons pushed by Travion Henderson, who actually made a very curious look toward the coaching staff during the game on Sunday. And also, Steve Cohen is parting ways with his commode. What does it mean? I'll tell you. Time now for Last Licks. In a very entertaining game on Sunday, the Indianapolis Colts ended up leaving Berlin with a 31-25 win over the Atlanta Falcons. But what happened in Germany doesn't necessarily stay in Germany before the game. In fact, the owner of the Indianapolis Colts, Carly Irsay Gordon, of course, the daughter of Jim Irsay, who passed away last year, has now taken over the reins of the team. And she also took over the reins of a restaurant. In fact, all of the fans who traveled from Indianapolis to Berlin to watch the game, they had a special headquarters there at a restaurant. And Irsay Gordon made an announcement that she was buying all of the drinks during the day that were purchased by customers at the bar. They were all on the house, all on the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, it does seem like this owner is doing a great job. Very well liked. Involved, I know, in a lot of different ways, but definitely seems to be doing all the right things. And you very rarely would say that about an owner in professional sports, but good big ups, I would say, to Carly Irsay Gordon. The tab is on the Colts, and that was a pretty big tab, I'm guessing, in Germany, because naturally before a pro football game or even a soccer game in Germany, they do like their drinks. Okay, so Travion Henderson had his big breakout game probably last week, to be honest with you, but this week he really let loose. In fact, Henderson not only rushed for 100 yards, he had a 69-yard rushing touchdown toward the end of the game. But what Henderson did was unique in the sense that you don't see this happen in pro football a lot, let alone with a rookie. As Henderson was surging toward the goal line, he took a look over to the coaching staff to make sure that he was allowed to score. Because had he gone down, the game potentially could have ended. But in the moment, the coaches were like, yeah, go score a touchdown. Pretty cool moment there for Travion Henderson, and good job. Maybe this endears him to play a little bit more. I know there's a lot of you fantasy football players out there who drafted Henderson at the beginning of the season. You got nothing week 1 and week 2 and week 3 and week 4 and week 5. It took forever for this guy to get in the game. I don't even know why this was happening. But Henderson right now, if you have him in fantasy, you're feeling pretty good. Patriots beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and of course, Henderson was the star with a 69-yard touchdown that he was allowed to score. Finally, Steve Cohen is bidding farewell to one of his prized possessions. Cohen apparently owns a gold-plated toilet that he purchased back in 2017, and Cohen has decided that he does not need it anymore. Because who needs a toilet that's worth $10 million? Yes, that's right. The bidding at the current auction is set at $10 million for this gold toilet. Oh, to have this kind of money like Steve Cohen has, where you could just buy a toilet for, I mean, not even $1 million, $2 million, $10 million. I guess, signing some of these players led to him having to get some money back here. Probably not. And by the way, this is the last thing that any owner wants to be known for. But what happens is your name shows up in an auction, and there it is. But I don't know. Does anybody need a $10 million toilet? I guess Steve Cohen does not. Congrats to him. Hopefully he gets his money. Maybe he could sign starting pitcher at some point this season. Not for $10 million. Not going to happen. All right, that'll do it for our show today. Thanks to our great guests, and they were great. Vinny Iyer, Jacob Kamaker, Donnie, and Adam Kaplan. Great set of guests we had on our program today. In case you missed the big news in the National Football League, and I'm sure we're going to be covering this all throughout the day, including on Game Time Decisions and In-Game Live. Giants are looking for a new head coach. Brian Daboll's out, 20-40-1 as head coach of the Giants. Joe Shane, GM, still has his gig. Mike Kafka, offensive coordinator, new interim head coach of the New York Giants, as both the Jets and Giants in consecutive years making coaching changes, which seems to be a common theme, by the way, both those teams in the last 10, 15 years. All right, that'll do it for our show today. Thanks again to our director, Luke, for my producer, Frank. I'm Craig Mish. Enjoy the rest of the programming, rest of the day here on SportsGrid. Don't forget to catch our coverage of Monday Night Football, as I mentioned, in-game live, game time decisions. We also have NBA, National Hockey League, some of the best programming you can imagine, and some great stuff coming up for the holiday season, too. Make sure you stick around with SportsGrid throughout the holidays. Fun time to be watching college and pro football. See you Tuesday for our next edition of NewsWire.